The hotel suite was quiet in a way that made every small sound more pronounced than usual. From the faint hum of the air conditioner to the subtle creak of the floorboards as Fan Zhao shifted slightly in place. The soft, golden light from the ceiling fixture bathed the room in a warmth that felt almost intimate, though it was far from romantic. Yet despite the mundane, everyday setting, the air between Fan Zhao and Yu Shulang was heavy with unspoken thoughts, subtle observations, and the kind of tension that comes not from anger or conflict but from restraint and anticipation. Fan Zhao's gaze fell to the bottle of red wine sitting on the small table between them. It had been packed carefully in his luggage, a personal indulgence he had brought along for this work trip. Expensive, rare, something he had considered sharing when the moment was right. Up until now, Yu Shulang had always refused to open it. He was methodical, disciplined, a man of precise routines, and alcohol simply did not fit into the image he maintained for himself. But tonight, after the long day's work, after subtle disagreements and careful interactions, something seemed to have shifted in the quiet of the suite. Yu Shulang reached for the bottle, uncorking it with the same meticulous, controlled motions that characterized everything he did. There was no rush, no hesitation, just the deliberate care of a man who calculated each gesture, each breath, and each movement with precision. Fan Zhao felt a twinge of curiosity he couldn't quite shake. It wasn't the wine itself, it never had been, but the act of sharing it. The acknowledgement. It was small, subtle, almost invisible to an unobservant eye, yet it carried a significance that Fan Zhao recognized instantly. A quiet invitation, perhaps, to engage in something more than their usual professional routines. As Yu Shulang poured the wine into 2 glasses, the young red liquid swirled slightly, the aroma sharp and lively, with just a hint of tartness lingering in the air. The way the liquid moved, catching the light as it fell into the crystal glasses, made the room feel alive in a subtle, almost cinematic way. Yu Shulang then lifted 1 glass toward Fan Zhao, his gaze briefly flicking to the bandaged hand he had injured earlier. There was concern there, tempered with the calm, careful composure that defined him, and Fan Zhao caught it immediately. The unspoken acknowledgement of his injury, the recognition of his effort, the quiet patience, all of it coalesced into a moment that was both grounding and unnervingly intimate. Fan Zhao accepted the glass with a small nod, careful not to let his emotions show too plainly, though his chest tightened with awareness. "You finally decided to open it," he said lightly, trying to fill the silence with words that were both teasing and cautious. Yu Shulang's lips curved slightly, a subtle twitch that suggested amusement or perhaps recognition, though his expression remained composed, unreadable to anyone not attuned to the smallest shifts. There was a moment of pause, a gentle, deliberate quiet in which both men observed each other, breathing slowly, feeling the unspoken layers of their connection deepen. The wine, the act of holding a glass, and the simple proximity created an emotional space between them, charged not with overt action, but with subtle acknowledgement, a recognition that both men had been carefully observing the other for months. The conversation began lightly, carefully avoiding anything too personal, yet layered with nuance. They discussed the day's filming, minor frustrations with schedules, small observations about the production team, and the challenges of maintaining energy and focus during long hours. But beneath the words lay currents of understanding that could not be expressed aloud. Every glance, every subtle shift in posture, every pause held meaning. Fan Zhao noted the way Yu Shulang's hand moved when adjusting the glass. The careful precision in his movements, the deliberate way he chose each word. There was discipline, yes, but there was also care, a quiet, understated consideration that made Fan Zhao's heart respond in ways he could not articulate. It was not romantic. It was human. It was attention, acknowledgement, the kind of understanding one develops through extended observation and silent empathy. At one point, Fan Zhao gestured toward the window, looking out at the city below. The lights stretched endlessly, tiny points of illumination against the dark canvas of night. "It's strange," he said softly, almost to himself, "how even when everything is calm, it never feels calm. There's always something beneath the surface." Yu Shulang followed his gaze, silent for a moment, letting the observation settle between them. "We rarely give ourselves time to pause," he finally said, measured and thoughtful. "Even small moments like this, moments we think are ordinary, are rare. They deserve recognition." Fan Zhao took a slow sip from his glass, letting the warmth of the liquid ground him in the present. The quiet between them was not awkward. It was comfortable, a rare space in which both men could exist without masks or pretense. The discussion gradually deepened without ever becoming overtly personal. They spoke about the challenges of working in their environment, of managing expectations, of navigating difficult colleagues, and of maintaining professionalism under pressure. Yet the way they communicated allowed for subtle vulnerability, the kind that comes from mutual respect and trust. Fan Zhao found himself noticing the subtle micro-expressions in Yu Shulang's face, the gentle lift of an eyebrow, the brief softening of his eyes, the measured patience in his voice. Each observation became a thread, weaving a tapestry of understanding and silent empathy between them. It was not romance, it was not flirtation. It was connection, the kind that could sustain a partnership, a collaboration, or simply mutual respect over time. The evening stretched on with this careful rhythm. They continued to sip the wine slowly, deliberately, letting the drink serve as a backdrop to their emotional engagement rather than a focal point. There were moments of laughter, soft and unobtrusive, and moments of quiet reflection. Fan Zhao allowed himself to feel the relief of being in the presence of someone who understood, who observed, who valued subtle honesty without needing to push boundaries or demand declarations. And Yu Shulang, for his part, allowed himself to be slightly more present than usual, letting the shared quiet linger without rushing to fill it with commentary or professional directives. As the night wore on, Fan Zhao reflected on how rare such moments were. In a world where schedules, obligations, and appearances dominated their lives, a simple evening of sharing a bottle of wine had become a form of sanctuary. They spoke less, observed more, and allowed the silence to carry meaning. Each glance, each gesture, each unspoken acknowledgement deepened the trust between them. The wine, the room, the quiet, the setting became a stage upon which subtle emotional complexity could play out safely, without transgression or impropriety. It was a study in restraint, patience, and human understanding, and Fan Zhao found himself both exhilarated and comforted by the experience. Eventually, the wine was nearly gone. The glasses were set back on the table, carefully placed with the same deliberate precision that had characterized the entire evening. The air between them had shifted. It was lighter, calmer, but still charged with mutual recognition. Neither man had crossed boundaries, yet the emotional landscape had changed. They had shared a moment that required nothing physical, nothing inappropriate, and yet it was profound in its simplicity. It was acknowledgement, validation, and silent respect. Fan Zhao realized that connection did not require bold gestures or declarations. It could exist quietly, in measured glances, shared understanding, and the willingness to simply be present with another person.